you're older like me, you will remember the Y2K scare. If you're younger, hopefully you have some people who have told you about it, parents, family members, that kind of stuff. And it just seems like it's just this little speed bump that happened. And everyone was scared, and then it happened, and said and done. And it's nothing that people look back at, nothing people really talk about. It's just like one of those, oh yeah, I remember that. That's all it is. But now think about this. At least I have. There was a don't go out on New Year's, because that happened, 1999, New Year's Eve. Don't go out on New Year's. Replace all your old computers, all your old electronics. Get all this software that's going to prevent you from crashing and melting down all your computers and that kind of stuff. So tons of it. At that time, I worked for a Office Max, I believe it was, and you couldn't believe all the, Y2K scare software they had. Buy this one, then buy this one, and if you don't want to, you buy this ultimate one. And we're not talking small money back then. We're talking, this one was like close to $100. This one was like $30, but you needed another one. This one was only $24, but it only worked for this. And then this one was $12, but it only worked for so-and-so. And I mean, all these things, they sold and sold and sold. And I remember we got more and more shipments of this stuff in. It was just the whole sentiment was be very afraid. No one knows what's going to happen, but be very afraid and be very scared. I know some people I talked to after the fact, they were telling me that they had invested and bought these huge things of all this water and all this stuff because of what's going to happen on Y2K. Anyways, so nothing really happened. A very small number of old, cheap electronics. It had some weird date features went awry and it got weird. Some of them just didn't work anymore, but we're talking VCRs and that kind of stuff, older things like that. But what I do know happened, Y2K, I was working. I had to work that night, December 31st of 1999. I worked most of that day, and I worked overnight at the store I was working at because we had something going on with I think the cleaning crew or whatever it was, but also had to be there to make sure there wasn't a major meltdown and all the computers and all this kind of stuff. So it was a corporate thing. So I got done working, I believe it was the next day at 6 or 7 in the morning. Nothing happened. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And I didn't expect anything to happen either because I've known some stuff about computers before a lot of other people had. Not a ton, but I knew some. I was, I got into the spectrum of it versus keeping out. So I do some and starting to read things and learn about things. A lot didn't make sense to me. So I just thought this is more of a scare tactic thing than anything. But what I do know happened, a lot of people were scared and a lot of people made a lot of money from it. Period. That's it. So that makes me question, was there really cause for concern? Was there really a reason that everyone should have been frightened? Everyone needed to spend all this money. Everyone needed to do all these other things because of what these lies were that were being told. Or they weren't lies, the misunderstanding or the not understanding that was being told to them because the people reporting it didn't know their head from the hole in the ground. So you got to think about that. Who are you listening to? Do they know? And even if you know they know, I always verify it. Trust but verify is always what I go by. Trust but verify. So I knew this whole thing. I had a feeling this whole thing was a scam. Just because of all these discs coming in and all these scare tactics and all this stuff. And I had people coming into the store and they were scared to death and they wanted to spend all this money and all these new computers as long as they were Y2K safe. They were approved to get through the new millennial, whatever. And so they want to spend all this money, and I'm not that type of person. I mean, if my company would have found out, I sure would have got fired because I didn't veer them towards spending all this money. My deal was, well, how old is your computer? They would tell me, I'm like, well, what operating system you running? I mean, that kind of stuff, X, Y, Z. And then 9 times, even 9.9 times out of 10 sometimes, I would say, you should be fine. You're fine. You don't have something that's ancient. You don't have something that's old. You don't have something that, hasn't been up to date with all this software stuff. You should be fine. And some of them would not believe me. They still wanted to buy these discs and this software. I couldn't prevent that, but they did. And some I didn't never see again. A couple I've seen again, and they say, well, I thank you for that. There wasn't a big deal, but I feel embarrassed that I spent this money on these things. I said, well, I just tried to help you. I could have sold you a bunch of stuff, but that's not me. So anyways, so knowing this was a scam back then, and knowing the people who would have looked into this or read this didn't really get listened to, but they were the ones that ended up being right. And it seemed like this has happened a lot throughout the years. I just got to be thinking, a ton of people made a lot of money. And it feels like maybe, just maybe, is that what has been going on now? I know that's a thing that is always going on, people making money, but a ton of people making a ton of money, taking a ton of control. Is this the same type of deal on a much higher level? It seems very familiar to me. And I know, there are many more circumstances, many more things I could point to in the past that seem to fall in line with, what's going on. But this was the thing that popped in my head. I'm like, it doesn't get talked about much. And I know first-hand experience to this, and I know how freaked out people were and how much they wanted to just spend all this money and do all these things to protect themselves or their computers or whatever, and they didn't need to. And I couldn't talk them out of it. I could talk some out, but I couldn't talk some at all. They wanted nothing to hear. They wanted to talk to someone else. Someone wanted to talk to other people. Because obviously I didn't know. A couple of comments I got from a few people. Obviously I didn't know. So they wanted to talk to someone else. There's just no undoing some of this indoctrination, I call it. I guess. I don't know what to say, but it just seems very familiar to me. Anyways, if this is a boring deal to you, I just want to get people thinking a little bit. As always, hit the like, share, subscribe, and stay vigilant. Protect yourself, protect your family, protect your health, protect your wealth.